Hello friends, so let us continue our discussion on why certain minerals adapt a specific form of crystal structure. So we saw in the previous lecture that one of the characterizing features or a distinguishing feature of a mineral that is available on the surface of the earth is that it exhibits a regular arrangement of its fundamental entity. So this fundamental entity can be an atom or it can also be an alloy. So this fundamental entity in a crystal, it is regularly arranged. Particularly, it is regularly arranged over a very long range order. So we quantified what long range order is, and we also saw what a regular arrangement is. So depending on the regular arrangement, so when we consider the regular arrangement just by using a couple of vectors in 2 dimension or 3 vectors in 3 dimension, we saw this regular arrangement can be identified as different crystal structures. Now we are considering why these minerals are associating itself with these different crystal structures. One of the primary factors that govern the association of a mineral to a particular crystal structure has to do with the bonding that exists between these entities. So in the previous lecture, we began by considering different bonds. We saw the features that govern the crystal structure when you consider metallic bond and the ionic bond. So metallic bond and ionic bonds, they have their characteristic features and they dictate the way the atoms are arranged in a crystal. Now we were not able to conclude or arrive at the similar conclusion for covalent bond. So that is what we will be trying to do in this lecture. So in order to have a continuity of thought, let us just recollect what we considered in the previous lecture. So the fundamental aspect that we are dealing with here is how the bonding between the fundamental entities that is principally reflective of a mineral dictates its crystallographic arrangement. So that is what we are dealing with here. So we want to relate the bonding between these entities, ions or atoms, to that of the crystallographic arrangement or the crystal structure a mineral adopts in its natural form. So we began by considering different sort of bondings. We saw metallic bonds, ionic bonds and covalent bonds. So one of the fundamental factor, irrespective of the bonding, that dictates the arrangement of these entities in a crystal is the lowest energy configuration. So low energy configuration is one of the fundamental low energy configuration is one of the fundamental criteria that needs to be satisfied when you have a formation of a mineral. So when you have a mineral that is being formed, when you have a mineral wherein the entities are regularly arranged, this condition, it inevitably needs to be satisfied in order to have a crystal or in order to have a mineral in its natural state. So irrespective of the bonding between the entities, be it between the ions, be it between the atoms, this condition needs to be satisfied. So this is nothing but a universal or a fundamental thermodynamic law. This stems from a thermodynamic law, which is nothing but when allowed to itself, the system settles down in a minimal energy state. So that is what, in terms of the regular arrangement of entities in a crystal, translate to low energy configuration. So when you allow the atoms that contribute to or that constitute a mineral, when you allow these atoms to settle down, it assumes a lowest energy state. So irrespective of the bonds you have, this condition needs to be satisfied. So we want to understand how the bonding relates to the crystal structure that a mineral assumes. Now the first condition that needs to be satisfied is that the bonding or the entity should be arranged in such a way that they assume or they reflect a lowest energy configuration. So this condition needs to be satisfied in metallic bonding, ionic bonding and also in covalent bonding. Now we saw in the previous lecture what are the characteristic features of metallic bonds. Now if you consider metallic bonds, the reason these metallic bonds are largely associated with elements, particularly metals. Now the reason one needs to consider, or while in the context of mineral one needs to consider an element or particularly metal, is because there are certain metals that are available in nature in its purest form. in its elemental form there are metals that are available. So this we refer to as the native mineral. These are certain topics or certain aspects that we covered in the previous lecture. So just for the purpose of recollection and to have a continuity of thought, I'm just presenting it here as well. So you have certain minerals that we call as native minerals. So these native minerals, they are available in the nature in its elemental form, and when you consider a mineral in its elemental form, the entity that constitutes this mineral is not an ion but rather atom. And since these native minerals are primarily metals, you have these atoms which are regularly arranged, and since these are metals and the metals have certain distinguishing features or there are certain characteristic features, which is one is the low electronegativity, meaning these atoms of the metals, they readily lose electrons and assume a positive charge. And even though they assume a positive charge by losing an electron, these electrons don't go away from these atoms, but they form an electron cloud. These atoms of metal, they lose electrons and transform into ions. And these electrons, they don't go and attach itself to any other atom, but they form electron cloud, and they continue to move around the atom, thereby maintaining the electrical neutrality. So essentially what we are having here is, even though these atoms, they assume a status of an ion by losing an electron, since these electrons are not attached to a specific ion elsewhere or it is not completely removed from the system, and these ions continue, they form an electron cloud and they revolve around these different ions. They are the whole setup as a whole is electrically neutral. So even though technically, when we want to talk in terms of electron configuration, we say ions are the entities, or because of the electronegative feature of the atoms, the ions constitute the fundamental entity in a metallic bonding. Since these electron clouds always surrounds these ions, the electrical neutrality is maintained, and it is as if these atoms are the fundamental entities. So of course the atoms are fundamental entities because these electrons that are given out by these atoms, these metal atoms particularly, they are not away or they are not detached or completely detached from these atoms. They have not attached themselves to a different atom, they have not moved away from the system, and therefore you still maintain an electrical neutrality that is similar to that of an atom. And therefore essentially in case of metallic bonding, what you have is electrically neutral spheres, electrically neutral atoms again because of the electron clouds that it surrounds the entities, and these are of identical sizes. So we have entities which can be treated as atoms because they are electrically neutral, and again the sizes do not vary because it's the electrons that are from the outer shell that are being that are being moved into the electron cloud. So there is not significant change in the size of the atoms that is present in the gaseous state and the atoms that are present in the crystal state. There is not much difference in the size, and all the entities that are present, they have identical size primarily because they are in its elemental form, they are in its purest form, and therefore you have the entities that are of identical size and electrically neutral. So you have to satisfy this condition, that is lowest energy configuration irrespective of the bonding. And secondly, you have metallic bonds where the entities are identical in size and they are electrically neutral. So there is not much additional constraint that is imposed by metallic bonds. So whenever we are talking or trying to relate the bonds between the entities to that of the crystal structure that is exhibited by the corresponding mineral, we need to account for the conditions that is imposed by this particular bonding. So one condition is that irrespective of the bonding, the lowest energy configuration should be attained. The other condition is that this specific condition then is imposed by the bonds that exist between the different entities. Now, since in case of metallic bonds, the sizes of the entities are similar and they are also largely electrically neutral. Again, largely they are neutral. So therefore, there is not much additional condition that is being imposed by the metallic bonds. So all that needs to be satisfied is the lowest energy configuration. Therefore, ultimately you have close packed regular arrangement of the entities. So when you have a lowest energy, when you want to have a lowest energy configuration of identically sized electrically neutral entities, you end up having closed pack regular arrangement of the atoms. So that is the reason why when you observe a native mineral that comprises of purely of metal elements, or it comprises purely of metals, and then what you observe is when you consider its crystal structure, you have closed packed regular arrangement of the entities or atoms in large. This is primarily because the bonds that exist between these entities do not impose an additional condition. So all the condition that needs to be satisfied is the lowest energy configuration, and when you allow the system to settle down to its lowest energy configuration, you ultimately end up having a closed pack arrangement of the entities. Now let us move on to the other crystal structure that we, or other bonding type of bonding that we considered in the previous class, that is the ionic bonds. So in case of ionic bonds, what essentially the origin or the reason we have the formation of ionic bonds is because we have ions as the fundamental entities of a mineral. So in order to establish an ionic bond, you need to have formation of the ions, and these ions form the fundamental entities of the minerals. Only the presence of the ions, when the ions constitute themselves in the form of the minerals, you have the formation of ionic bonds. So depending on the charge of the ions, we can categorize them as cations and anions. So the cations rather involve they associate, or they are characterized by the positive charges, and the anions, they are characterized by the negative charges. Now see, we saw that irrespective of the bonds that is assumed between, or the bonds that is established between the entities in a mineral, the arrangement of the entities should assume a low energy configuration. So the easiest way for us to understand how a mineral gets its arrangement is that there is an interplay. So there is an interplay between different factors. The first factor is that the atoms or the entities should assume a lowest energy configuration, and the second factor, it usually comes from the nature of bonding. So you have a condition that is imposed by the nature of bonding, and you have a universal thermodynamic condition that is to assume a lowest energy configuration. So the combination of these two is what appears as the arrangement of the entities in a mineral. So we saw in the metallic bonding, there is no much specific or characteristic condition that is imposed by the metallic bonds. However, the same cannot be said for ionic or the covalent bonds. So in view of this lowest energy configuration, in the presence of the lowest energy configuration, we need to look for what is the specific condition that these definite bonds they impose, and the interplay of these two, that is the lowest energy configuration and the specific condition imposed by these bonds, is what ultimately translates to the arrangement of ions in a crystal. So ionic bonds, speaking of it, we saw that the ionic bonds, they form only in the presence of ions. We categorize these ions as cations and anions. Now these cations and anions, because of these unlike charges, they are attracted to each other, and this attraction it can be expressed by the Coulomb's law, and it is nothing but the product of the charges. So let us assume Qz as the charge of the cation and Qa as the charge of the anion, so product of the charges, and so the force of attraction between these two ions is directly proportional to the product of the charges. So this is a Coulomb's. This is entirely based on Coulomb's law of attraction. So the Coulomb's force is expressed in this manner, and it is proportional to the product of the charges of the anion and cation. Since these products have their definite magnitude, we can assume its absolute value in case of a numerical treatment. And it is inversely, this charge or this force of attraction is inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. So you have two unlikely charged or two ions with unlike charges. The force of attraction between them is the product of the magnitude of their forces, and they are inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. Now this force of attraction is primarily because of the charge of the ion as a whole. So this force of attraction is because of the charge of the ions. So we are not considering any subatomic particles, but we are considering the charge of the ion as a whole. So we are considering ion in a holistic framework, and by considering the nature of the charge between these ions, we are calculating or estimating the force of attraction between these two ions. Now, when we move into or closer to these ions, we have subatomic particles that constitute these ions, and because of these charge, and so these subatomic particles, they have their own characteristic charges, and because of the interaction between the subatomic particles, there is also a force of repulsion. So this force of repulsion, we refer to it as the Bond's repulsion, and this again, while the Coulomb's attraction is because of the ions as a whole, this force of repulsion is because of the interaction between the interatomic particles. So this we refer to as the Bond's repulsion. So this is Coulomb, this is Bond's repulsion, and the expression for the Bond's repulsion, because it has to do with the subatomic particles, the interaction between the subatomic particles, the magnitude of this Bond's repulsion is dependent on the electronic configuration. So correspondingly, the force of repulsion that is largely associated with the interaction of the subatomic particles is expressed as the distance is inversely proportional, so therefore it is expressed as n by, rather, since we have considered the distance between the ions as r, 1 plus n, and n depends on the electronic configuration. So ideally, there needs to be a definite convention that we need to follow when we are calculating the attractive force and the repulsive force. So the attractive force comes from ions as a whole, whereas the repulsive force, it comes from the interaction between the subatomic particles. So you need to assume or define a particular convention while estimating this force of attraction and the force of repulsion. So that needs to be considered, and because of this convention, there might also be a negative sign here. So again, taking the absolute values and assuming a sign here, this all has to do with the convention that you adopt. Now, since we are dealing with ions of specific charges in ionic bonding, we need to account for this Coulomb's force of interaction or attraction rather, and the Bond's force for repulsion. And now the stable position of the ions in an ionic bond is when these two forces are balanced. So the resultant of these forces, that is Coulomb's attractive force and Bond's repulsive force, when they cancel out each other, when they annihilate each other, is when we have the stable position of the ions. So that means if we place the ions at different position, at a specific position, so you place it here and calculate the Coulomb's attraction and Bond's repulsion. You place it closer and you do the same. And at some point, depending on the distance between these two ions, these forces, they annihilate each other. These forces, they cancel out each other, thereby rendering the minimum energy state or the stable position. So this is where the atoms are, or the ions rather, are in their minimal energy state or their stable position. So this expression here, this cancelling out or balancing of the Bond's repulsion and Coulomb's force of attraction, it is what ultimately dictates the inter-atomic or inter-ionic distance in a mineral. So you have a mineral that largely comprises of ions. When you have such a mineral, the distance between these ions is governed by this balance between the Coulomb's attraction and Bond's repulsion. And only when you have this balance, you have a stable state. So now, the lowest energy configuration that has to do with the arrangement of the ions, an additional condition is imposed to it, that is, the distance between these ions should be specific in such a way that the forces of attraction and the repulsion, they should cancel out each other. So now you have a universal condition. This condition needs to be satisfied irrespective of your bond. And you have a bond specific condition. You have a material specific condition, a bonding specific condition, that is the distance, even though you might have a low energy configuration, you might assign a position of ions based on the low energy configuration. The distance between the ions should be in such a way that the force of attraction, the Coulomb's attraction and Bond's repulsion should cancel out each other. So combination of these two. So combination of these two factors is what ultimately leads to the arrangement of ions in a crystal wherein the bonding is ionic bonds. So essentially, in case of minerals wherein the bond between the entities are ionic bonds, there are two factors, or one can also say that the interatomic distance is a variant of the lowest energy configuration, but nevertheless the lowest energy configuration can be treated as a universal thermodynamic principle that needs to be satisfied, and in addition to that you have the specific interatomic distance that needs to be satisfied, that is characteristic of these ionic bonds, that is the Coulomb's attraction and Bond's repulsion needs to cancel out each other, and only in such a case or only under such a condition you have stable configuration. So these are the only two conditions that needs to be satisfied. One is universal and one is typical to the ionic bonds. These are the conditions that needs to be satisfied for the arrangement of ions in a crystal or in a mineral where ionic bond exists. So there is not much relevance, or there is not much role or influence played by the way in which these ions are arranged, meaning the angle these ions assume, the angle between the vectors which we considered during the treatment of the crystal structure. These angles doesn't play much of a role when you talk about the arrangement of ions in a mineral wherein the bonds are established through ionic bondings. So therefore, since only these two play a role, these are referred to as non-directional bonding. So these are largely treated as non-directional bonds. So yeah, let's have the term relative here, because we will eventually understand why we need to introduce the term relative here, but it is relatively. So what we need to understand here is, when we talk about, or when we discussed the crystal systems, we saw that in addition to the magnitude of the vectors, the angle play a vital role. So these angles, they dictate these angles are characteristic of a specific crystal system. Now when you consider the arrangement of ions in a mineral with ionic bonds, we saw that it is the Coulomb's law of attraction and repulsion that plays a vital role. It is not the angles between them. It is not how the ions are placed with relation to one another. It is just primarily the distance between them that governs the arrangement of the ions in case of minerals with ionic bonds. So therefore, since the angle is not predetermined, or angle is not a condition that is imposed by the ionic bonds, the relation of the direction between the vectors, or the ion should be placed in such a way that it is the lowest energy configuration. So since there is not an angular aspect that is associated with it, there is not an orientation aspect associated with the ionic bonds, we refer to that as largely or relatively non-directional bonds. So in case of metallic bonds, what we are essentially dealing with is that identical sized electrically neutral atoms, and what we need to do is we need to have these atoms assume a lowest energy configuration, thereby we established a regular arrangement in a mineral with the metallic bonds. In case of ionic bonds, what we have is cations and anions, and these ions exhibit, when you consider ions as a whole, they exhibit Coulomb's force of attraction, and when you consider the subatomic particles, they exhibit or they render Bond's repulsion, and these attraction and repulsion, they need to cancel out each other in order to have a stable position of these ions. And this stable position, or this balancing of the forces along with the lowest energy configuration, that is universal, is what governs the position of the ion in the minerals with the ionic bonds. Now it is important to note that apart from the position of the mineral, or rather apart from the position of the ions, this particular bonds does not impose any further condition. So particularly it does not impose any further condition of how these positions needs to be oriented, or what should be the angle between these ions. So such condition is not imposed by ionic bonds. So therefore we refer to them as relatively non-directional bonds. Now when compared to metallic bonds, it is important to note that while the entities of the metallic bonds are of equal size, in case of the minerals wherein the ionic bond is present, wherein the fundamental entities are anions and cations, the sizes of the entities are different, or they are significantly different. Sizes of the entities or the ions are different, and they are significantly different. So therefore, the low energy configuration in case of the metallic bonding, or in case of native mineral wherein the entities are of equal size, may not be as identical to that of the low energy configuration of a mineral wherein the ions are fundamental entities. This is primarily because the sizes of the entities in case of native minerals comprising of atoms, they are identical. However, in case of minerals with ions, that is anions and cations, there are significant difference, and therefore the universal law, the universal thermodynamic principle may not act in the same manner the way it acts in the native mineral, the way it acts in the system with metallic bonding. Again, this primarily stems from the difference in the size of the entities, the difference in the size of the anions and cations. So the way the low energy configuration or the low energy condition manifests itself will be different in systems with ionic bond when compared to the systems in the metallic bonds. In metallic bonds, identically sized atoms. In case of ionic bonds, significantly different sizes of cation and anion brings about this difference. Now let us move on to the final bond that we need to consider when we are talking about the arrangement of entities in a, or the regular arrangement of entities in a mineral. So this bond is referred to as the covalent bond. So the definition or the description of this bond you would have learnt in your school days. So this is largely, these bonds are largely formed by the sharing of electrons. So if you consider the ionic bonds wherein you have positively charged and the negatively charged as charged ions they can be treated as the exchange of electrons. In case of covalent bond, there is not much exchange of electrons. What you have is sharing of electrons. Now this sharing of electrons, in order to establish this sharing of electrons, this cannot be random, because electron, they occupy specific positions or specific shells in an atom. So therefore, the sharing of the electrons between the atoms cannot be random. So in order to understand this sharing of electrons, we need to get back to a few concepts or few aspects of the arrangement of electrons in an atom. So if you consider that, you might have learned that electrons, they arrange themselves in a form or around the shell or around the nucleus along a particular orbit. And this orbit, these shells, they comprise of several different subshells. And these subshells, they are, or the probability of finding the electrons in a given subshell is higher in a specific region, and this we refer to it as orbitals. So what we essentially have is, in order to understand the covalent bond that exists between two entities in a given minerals, we have to understand, we have to get back to our understanding of the way electrons are arranged in a given atom. So if you consider the way electrons are arranged in a given atom, we have to start with the positions of the electron surrounding or around the nucleus. So when we have to consider the electronic configuration of an atom, or to put it simply, the arrangement of electrons in an atom, we have to begin with shells. And in these shells, we have to dissociate these shells into subshells. And in these subshells, the electrons, or finding electrons at specific spots, are of high probability. So within the subshells, if you have to find or if you have to locate an electron, then there are high probabilities in locating the electron in specific positions of the subshells, and these we refer to it as the orbitals. So in order to understand how the electrons are shared amongst two ions or two or more ions, in covalent bonds, we need to go back to the electronic configuration or how the electron is arranged within the atom. Then we have to begin the consideration of the shells. Then these shells are further dissociated into subshells in order to again fine tune our location or fine tune the position of the electrons. We have to get into the subshells from the shells, and in the subshells we have to define the orbital wherein the probability of finding the electrons is the highest. Now, depending on the subshells, the morphology of the orbital, the shape of the orbital, the region wherein finding the position of the electron is the highest, this region, the morphology of this region varies. Supposing if you consider the subshell F, wherein rather S, wherein the probability is almost identical in all the principal direction, then the shape of the orbital will be in the form of a sphere. So just to give a three-dimensional representation, you have a sphere here. Now, when the probability of locating an electron is identical in all principal direction, you have an orbital that is spherical in shape. Now, when you move away from the S subshell to a different subshell, then correspondingly the morphology or the shape of the orbital varies. Supposing if I consider a principal direction, the morphology of the orbital might something be like this, aligned along a particular principal direction. So, depending on the subshell, the region in which the electrons can be found, it varies. So, in case of subshell S, you can locate the probability of locating an electron over in 3 dimension along the different principal axis is the same. So, therefore, the orbital is of the spherical shape. However, when you move away from the S subshell to a different subshell, there is a specific morphology this orbital assumes, meaning that the probability of finding the electron along this particular principal axis, say X, is higher. So, there are several different orbitals that are present for the P subshells. So, the number of orbitals for a given subshell might vary. So, essentially the aspect that is highly relevant to us is that the electrons, in case of an atom, it is not equivalently found in all the positions. So, there are certain positions wherein the probability of finding the electron is significantly higher, and this is what we refer to as the orbitals, and these orbitals, depending on the subshells, they assume a definite shape. So, depending on the electronic configuration, depending on the atomic number of a given element, the probability of or the region wherein the electrons can be found, it varies. The morphology of the orbitals meaning the region wherein the electrons can be found with a higher degree of probability, it varies depending on the subshells. So, subshells again, they are something that is associated with the atoms or the entities that constitute a mineral. So, depending on the atomic number or depending on the nature of the entities, the probability of finding an electron within that given entity, it varies. So, this is dependent on the subshell and the orbital, the morphology of the orbital. So, an electron cannot be randomly found in a given entity. So, this electron can be found in a specific region, and the morphology of the specific region, it varies with the entities. Now, this is relevant to us because we want to have a bond that is formed by the sharing of electrons. So, sharing of electron is possible only when these orbitals, they overlap with each other. So, you have an orbital that is of this configuration oriented along this direction, say x axis. So, there should be another orbital that is oriented along the similar direction in order to have the overlap between these two orbitals. Again, these orbitals wherein the probability of finding an electron is the highest, they are of specific morphology and they are of specific orientation, and only when the morphology and the orientation of the neighboring orbital is similar to that of the existing one, only then you will be able to establish an overlap between these two orbitals. And only when there is an overlap between these two orbitals, there will be a sharing of electrons. And only when there is a sharing of electrons, you will establish a covalent bond. So, essentially, The reason we need to consider the morphology of the orbital is because the orbital is a region wherein the probability of finding the electron is the highest. Only when you have a definite shape of orbital and there is an overlap between the orbitals of two ions, only then there will be a sharing of electrons. And this sharing of electrons is what ultimately leads to covalent bond. Since this particular orbital, it has a specific shape and it is also oriented along a specific direction, the orbital of the neighboring or the ion that is getting that we want to establish a bond with, it should be aligned in a specific manner. So therefore, what we mean is that in addition to the interaction between the forces, so essentially we are dealing with subatomic ions and subatomic particles and also ions of like charges. In addition to that, so atoms of neutral charges and subatomic particles of like and unlike charges. In addition to all these forces of interaction because of the charges, the orbitals should overlap with each other between two ions. The orbitals of two atoms or ions should overlap with each other in order to form a covalent bond. And this overlap is possible only when you have a specific orientation, because the region wherein the probability of finding the electron, that is the orbital, they assume a specific orientation, they are of a specific shape. So only when you have an overlap of this orbital, you will be able to establish a covalent bond, and this overlap is only possible when you have a definite shaped orbital aligned in a definite orientation. So what it means is that in addition to governing the distance between the entities, the covalent bond also dictates the way in which these entities needs to be oriented. So the orientation of this So the orientation of these entities should be in such a way that there is an overlap of the covalent bonds and thereby establishing a sharing of electrons. So therefore, essentially what we have is, unlike metallic bonds and ionic bonds, wherein the condition imposed by the bonding is primarily the distance between the ions or just the regular or the low energy arrangement of these entities. In addition to all these, covalent bond presents a additional condition, that is the entities should be oriented in such a way that the orbitals should be considerably overlapped. So therefore, you have, in addition to the universal thermodynamic principle of low energy configuration, you have to have this condition of the distance, appropriate distance between the entities, and that is governed by the interaction between the subatomic particles. So this condition here, that is the appropriate distance between the entities, this is governed by the interaction between the subatomic particles and the overlap of the orbitals. So the overlap of the orbitals and the distance between the entities, these two conditions are introduced by, or these are characteristic of the covalent bondings. So in order to ensure these overlap or the overlap between the orbitals, we need to have the entities that are oriented along the particular direction. So therefore, in addition to the distance between the entities, covalent bonds also dictate the angular relation between the entities. So the angular relation between the entities is dictated by covalent bond because we need to have an overlap between the orbitals, and since orbitals are aligned in a specific orientation and they assume a specific morphology, covalent bond dictates the directional relation between the entities, and they also dictate, because of the interaction between the subatomic particles, the distance between the entities. So essentially what we have is interplay of these different factors. The lowest energy configuration, that is universal, that is the fundamental thermodynamic principle that is governing the arrangement of the entities. Secondly, we have the distance between the entities that is governed by the interaction with the subatomic particles. Thirdly, the directional arrangement of the entities should be appropriate and reflective of the characteristic features of the covalent bond, that is the sharing of electrons. This sharing of electrons is possible only when there is an overlap of the orbitals, and since the orbitals are oriented in a specific direction, they have a specific orientation, the covalent bond also ultimately dictates the angular relevance or relation between the entities. So combination or interplay of these different conditions is what ultimately leads to the arrangement of entities in a mineral wherein the entities are bonded through covalent bonds. So when you have a mineral wherein the entities are covalent bond is exhibited by the entities, you need to understand that the entities of these minerals, in addition to the distance between them, they are also specifically placed in a manner such a way that there is an overlap of the orbitals. If you see, or if you find, or if you are discussing about a mineral wherein the entities, the ions are bonded by covalent bond, then you need to understand that in addition to governing the distance between these ions, the positions of these ions, the directionality bit of these ions is also dictated by covalent bond, because covalent bond involves sharing of electrons, and the sharing of electrons is only possible when you have an overlap of orbitals, when you have the superimposition of the orbitals, and since these orbitals are of specific orientation, the angular component of, or the directional component of the entities are also decided by the covalent bond. So therefore, the covalent bonds are highly directional. So what we mean by that is, in addition to the distance between the ions, the positions of the ions, the angular relationship between the ions is also governed by the covalent bond in a mineral. So therefore, covalent bonds are the mineral wherein the covalent bond is the principal factor that establishes the relation between the two ions. It is highly directional. You cannot have by fixing the distance, you cannot play around with the position of the other ion. You have to have a specific position. The angle between the two ions, or the orientation between the two ions, should be specific and definite, because only then you will be able to establish the sharing of electrons. And this is because sharing of electrons is only possible, again, because you need to have an overlap of highly oriented orbitals. So therefore, when compared to metallic bonds, ionic bonds, covalent bonds are highly directional. And since the number of conditions that are imposed by the covalent bonds, they are significantly higher when compared to metallic bonds and ionic bonds. That is, the covalent bond should ensure the stable position between the atoms or between the ions, and it also needs to ensure that they are appropriately placed, that such that the overlap of the orbitals are possible. So because of these additional conditions, one cannot expect a closed packing. So a closed packing cannot be expected. A closed packing cannot be expected in case of the minerals wherein the ions are related through covalent bonds. Because in case of covalent bonds, we have several other characteristic conditions that needs to be satisfied. Closed packing takes a subservient position, and therefore, so it takes a position which is not highly critical. The principal conditions that are governing them is the distance between the ions and the way it is placed and the directional relationship between the ions. Since these factors take the primary role, the closed packing aspect takes a secondary role. Therefore, whenever you consider a mineral, and this mineral or the ions in the minerals are not closely packed, there are high chances that the bonds between the entities of these minerals are established through covalent bonds. So let me repeat, you are studying a mineral, and unlike several minerals, the entities of these minerals are not closely packed. Then from that we can state with a higher degree of certain degree of certainty that the entities of these minerals are related to one another or bonded through covalent bond, because covalent bond has certain other principal factors to consider other than the closed packing. In case of metallic bond, in case of ionic bond, closed packing or the lowest energy configuration that renders this closed packing is the primary factor that needs to be satisfied. However, in case of covalent bond, you have this fractionality component. You need to have this overlap of the specifically oriented orbitals. So this condition needs to be satisfied. And since this takes a primary role, in case of minerals wherein the covalent bonds are established, the close packing is not always observed. Now, these are the different ways in which the bonding that exists between the entities of the mineral translates into the way the entities are arranged. So, depending on the bonds, we might be able to say what are the factors governing the arrangement of the entities in the mineral. Now, in addition to saying that these are the ways in which, or these are the factors that influence the particular arrangement of entities in a mineral, it is also possible for us to predict the behavior of the mineral based on its arrangement of the entities. So that is what we will be looking into in the next lecture. So far what we have seen is, starting from the covalent bond, we saw what are the factors that dictate the arrangement of the entities in a mineral. So we started from the individual entities and moved to the arrangement of these entities in a mineral. So we almost took a bottom-up approach. We started from the entities and moved to the arrangement of these entities in a mineral. Now what essentially we will be doing in the next lecture is that we will be starting from this regular arrangement of the entities, and we will be seeing what are the properties that this regular arrangement of the entities renders. So what are the properties that are associated with the minerals, or what are the properties that are exhibited by the minerals that are largely due to this regular arrangement of the entities. So with this, I would like to wind up this lecture, and in the next lecture we will begin our discussion with the properties of the mineral that are primarily governed by the regular arrangement of the entities. Goodbye.